Hi everybody. This is the Black Spruce Knitting Podcast, and my name is Allie, and today I'm just going to jump right in. I haven't filmed a traditional podcast in a while, and this episode is going to be a little different. Well, it's going to be definitely a traditional podcast, but it is going to be sort of themed around what it has been like to be knitting after finishing a really big project. So you might have seen that about a month ago I got married to my partner, and I knitted a wedding dress, which I made a video about, and I'll definitely link if you are interested to check it out. And that project took me like 5 months, basically. And I worked on some other projects during it, some of which I'll show you today. But that was sort of like, in a way, it was kind of like doing a thesis. Like it was a long period of time and more challenging, I think, than in some ways more challenging and in some ways not more challenging, but maybe more difficult overall than any project I think I've knit. And since finishing it, I have been feeling a little lost with my knitting. It doesn't help that I have a back injury, which I've been treating, but it's sort of hard to sit up and knit. But I also have been feeling a little bit uninspired and sort of not sure about what my direction is. So I'll show you what I'm working on, because I still am working on things, and some of these projects have been unsuccessful for various reasons, and I'll tell you about them. There is one that I decided last night that I'm going to frog, but I have it to show you today. And I have actually my very first weaving sample to show you at the end, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that, and also sort of what I'm thinking. So if you are the type of person who likes to see many finished projects, this might not be the episode for you, but I'll talk you through a little bit of my thought process for these pieces that I have been working on. And as always, I hope that it is interesting either way. I don't have acquisitions to show, and I don't know how long this is going to be, but I will show you a couple different things. So the first project that I have to show you is this shawl, which is sort of a finished object. This is a half pie shawl. So I didn't really use a pattern. I just used a mathematical formula that I think is by Elizabeth Zimmerman. And I used, I think, just make one left when I was increasing, and I did a garter stitch border. And this is yarn that I spun from fiber that was dyed by Emily C. Gillies. And I will definitely link Emily's fiber. This is all Rambier. And I spun this yarn really specifically to get this long fade. Here, I'll give you some close-ups. So this yarn is a 3-ply, and I had 3 braids of fiber, and each braid was a gradient, and so I spun each braid of fiber as a single, and then I plied them together as a 3-ply. I'm a relatively new spinner. I've been spinning for a year, and I've never taken classes. I've kind of just figured it out. But I was really proud of this spin. The yarn feels soft and bouncy and not overspun. And I got the long marled gradient that I was hoping to achieve. And I got this, when I knitted this piece, what worked really well, and I knitted this while I was knitting the wedding dress, so this was sort of a break because it's mostly stockinette. But the idea that I had, here, I'm gonna put it on. The idea that I had about having this long gradient that starts with this greenish gray and ends with pink and crimson worked out really well. The thing that didn't work with this piece is that I did a garter stitch edging, and I think I did 3 stitches, and it's not enough of a garter stitch edging, and it is curling over. So I did, you okay, bud? I think he heard me bang into the window. I did a couple rows of garter at the edge, and it's totally fine before I bound off, but I didn't do enough of a garter stitch border, and I did block this, but it's still flipping. So to me, there was a lot of success in this piece. I've never made a piece completely out of hand spun before. This was also the first time I ever spun a yarn specifically for a project. This is probably like a worsted weight, and I had 3 braids, so I want to say 300 grams, but I think each braid was like 100 grams or 4 ounces. And the shawl itself is lovely. Now that it's blocked, it has a great drape. The shape is perfect. It's exactly what I had imagined, except for the flipping edge. And so as far as I'm concerned, I have a couple options for this edge. The first option would be to frog the whole piece and reknit it with a thicker border. So I didn't even mention, but if you're not familiar, if you have stockinette, it's always going to want to curl. Stitches, I saw a really cool photo. Stitches are kind of shaped like cups, and if you just keep putting them next to each other, the knits are going to want to curl, which is great if you're doing something in the round, but if you are knitting stockinette, you need a border or else it will flip like this. So I could frog the whole thing and rip it out and reknit it with a much thicker border, and I know that I wouldn't have this issue. And I haven't woven in the ends, so that is an option. I don't really want to do that. I don't really want to knit this again. I really enjoyed knitting it the first time. I'm really happy with how it's come out, other than the border. And that's not exactly what I would prefer to do. I could take out the bound off edging and ladder down, like undo just like maybe the 2 stockinette stitches next to the border, and then make them a garter stitch border, which feels very tedious. You know, that is not, there's a lot of border, and that's not exactly what I want to do. I could try sewing in like a thick piece of ribbon or fabric to see if that helps hold the border out, which is something that I'm considering. I think that I saw someone do that for a Yell cardigan, because sometimes with that Marie Wallen piece, I think the border flips through. Or I could just leave it and not worry about it too much. And I am interested, if you're watching this, in what you would do if this were your piece. You know, I knit it during a particular part of my life. I'm okay, I think, with the imperfection, but it does bother me. It does bother me a little because I otherwise really like this piece. And, you know, I think kind of one of the themes of this episode is going to be that while I was knitting my wedding dress, I was putting so much care and time into that I was maybe being careless with the other pieces that I was making, this one included. And I don't know if it's careless, but it was a little haphazard. I thought that 3 stitches of garter stitch border would be enough. I didn't block in the middle of the piece. If I were making this now, I probably would think a little bit differently. I didn't use any yarn overs as increases, which might have helped keep it flat, because all of the increases that I did, I used make one left. And so I don't know. I will say, I think it's unlikely that I will realistically wear it as a shawl over my shoulders, because I tend not to wear shawls. I wear them more like scarves. So maybe I can just leave it. The yarn is so soft This fiber was a dream to spin. It had been a holiday present from my dad last year. I'm so glad that I spun it all. I'm so glad that I made this piece, but I can't quite decide what to do about this flippy border. I don't want to reknit it. I know that about myself. So yeah, let me know what you think. I think there is a good chance I'm going to leave it. I think that's how it is. And maybe weave in these ends soon. So yeah, first finished object. So yeah, this was, to me, not completely successful. Still happy with it. But that is the first piece I want to show you. So the second piece is one that I decided last night that I'm going to frog. And this is my Azor by Orlan Souk. And I knit it out of stash yarn. I started it towards the end of working on the wedding dress when I was like, I need something for my hands. I had just finished that shawl, and I had, I really needed something that could be like great TV knitting and a distraction. And so I started this because I had a cone of Frangipani that I had bought at some point from the Woolly Thistle, and I had this Spincycle, dyed in the wool and in the meadows, which I had snagged from a second sale like a couple of years ago that had just been kind of sitting in my stash. And I loved this color work, and I thought it would be a really nice fun sweater. Whenever, for me, I'm having trouble like pairing something really colorful, I always like to pair it with black. And I love the way that the colors came out. I did a little bit of color management because I wanted to get to this teal color, and I just got to it by the end of the color work, but I did do some color management. The color is flipping. So, and I didn't gauge swatch for this. I almost always gauge swatch. It's just part of my practice. I know that not everyone does, but it is something that I prefer to do. But I didn't gauge swatch for this because I was really consumed with the wedding dress, and I just needed something that I could have on my needles, and the color work flew. And I've just been working on the stockinette body for a while, and then last night I finally put in another pair of needles to try it on for the first time, and I realized that it's huge. And I don't know, I haven't measured, I don't know how many inches this is, but for me, this is way more ease than I would like in a sweater. I'm a 41-inch bust. I think I was maybe knitting the size like medium 2. I think I used whatever the recommended needle size was, which I believe was US 4, and it's just enormous. And I was thinking about it for a while last night, and I thought, okay, there's a couple things I could do. I could rip back to the base of the yoke and put in some decreases to give it like a different silhouette so that it becomes slimmer. I could keep it with so much ease, decrease rapidly, and then do a band of ribbing to kind of cinch it in. I could rip the whole thing back and reknit it at a smaller size or with smaller needles, or I could frog it. And I thought about it for a long time, and I think I'm probably going to frog it because this yarn, the Frangipani, which comes on a cone, it's really made, I think, for Ganzis, and I just used it because it's what I had. But I believe that you're really supposed to knit this yarn on size US 1, or like size US 1.5 needle, and do really, really tight cable work. And it's an interesting yarn. It is worsted spun, not woolen spun, and it's like rough, but it's not itchy. I don't terribly mind it. I did kind of have, the stitches slipped off my needles, my Chowgo needles, frequently. But I found that, like, it was, I haven't knit a swatch, so I don't know what it's like when it's blocked, but it's really not made for this type of sweater. I don't think it's made for color work, and I think what I'm probably going to do is just rip it all out and save this yarn for a Gansey, or some type of like cable textured sweater, because I think that knit on, it says it's sport weight, but like knit on really small needles, I think that it really makes cables pop. I believe it's a 5-ply, and as you might know, I like more plies. Usually you have more stitch definition, whereas like a woolen spun yarn like Jameson and Smith, I think lends itself more to color work, because it can kind of like meld in to the other stitches. So this is probably gonna get frogged. My partner Chris was like, you can wear it and it can just be oversized. And I was like, maybe, but my heart is telling me to save the yarn for something else. I will say that I loved this pattern. I've never knit anything by Orlan Souk before, but I found it to be very well written, concise, which I like in a pattern, like not too many instructions. I just think that the color work motif is beautiful, and most people I think have knit it in solid colors and it looks stunning. So I would like to revisit this sweater at some point, probably with a different yarn, maybe with a Spincycle. It's funny, I have a couple skeins of Spincycle that I snagged from the second sale, and they're beautiful, and I just don't know what to use them for. But again, to me, this was not very successful. And if you can successfully knit sweaters without a swatch, then you possess a skill that I do not have. I just have to swatch, or else the size is never the way that I want it to be. So again, not terribly successful, served its purpose, was a wonderful distraction when I was making the wedding dress, and definitely helped me to calm down and to soothe myself, and, you know, reminded me how to do color work, because I hadn't done it in so long. So yeah, my Azor is probably going to get ripped out in the next few days. I do think it's really pretty though, so I keep looking at it. So yes. Here's the cone. I knew something was amiss when I realized I didn't have that much yarn left and I wasn't even done with the body. And what was amiss is that it is too wide for me. So those two projects were both started while I was knitting the wedding dress, but I have cast on something new with yarn from my stash. I think especially because I am feeling lost right now, I'm trying to knit with as much stash yarn as possible. And I have a lot of projects that I've been waiting a long time to make with stash yarn, and I'm trying to knit those. And this is a project, here, let me grab it. This is a project for Chris, my partner, spouse, husband, and it is called the Rock Island Line sweater. I believe it is by, oh my goodness, gonna put the name here. And it's a pretty simple sweater. It has a nice broken rib. It starts with a 3x1 rib, and then it goes to the 7x1 broken rib. And while I'm sure that it doesn't look very interesting now, this yarn is Blue Sky Woolstok worsted in cast iron. I bought the 150 gram skeins, which are awesome because they give you a lot of yarn. It doesn't look super interesting now, but it's going to have color blocking at the top. And what I'm really excited about is the color that I have for the color blocking, which I'm gonna grab. These two skeins of Making Tracks by Junction Fiber Mill. I made a video with a visit to their mill. I do need to visit again. I should send them an email. but they are a local to me mill, and their yarn is now being sold at the Woolly Thistle. So if you are interested, you could check it out there. But I got this special yarn there with the intention of making a sweater for Chris, and we chose this as kind of a nice neutral contrast color. And my original plan had been to make a colorwork yoke sweater, but I was having a really hard time getting gauge for the sweater that I wanted to knit, which was one by the Petite Knitter. And so I decided to do with this one just color block. And I did swatch for this one because now that I'm done with that really big project, I'm back to swatching, which is part of my practice. And I'm really excited to get to the part with the marled yarn because I think it'll be really fun. Although this has been a nice soothing knit. I'm finding this Blue Sky Woolstok to be a really, really enjoyable yarn to knit with. I find it soft but like grippy. I know that it's not too expensive. It's kind of middle of the road. So I could see this maybe being like a workhorse yarn for me. Of course, I'm interested to see how it wears when Chris starts to wear it, but I think this is a great color. I've been really happy with knitting it so far. And so I swatched. This swatch was actually a little bit too big, but I know that my pearl rows tend to be looser than my knit rows. So I did another swatch in the round to make sure that I got gauge, and I did. I think I went down a needle size from what's recommended to US 5. I think I just knit a little loose. But this is what it will look like. And there will be some thin stripes and then some color blocking, and it's bottom up. So I will do the sleeves 2 at a time when I'm done with the body section, and I think it's gonna fit great and hopefully be a sweater that Chris can wear a lot. I've been wanting to make Chris a lot of sweaters recently, and this feels like it'll be really cool. I'm making like I think the 40-inch size, and Chris is, I want to say like 36-inch chest measurement, but has told me that they prefer having sweaters that have a little bit of ease. And so I think that, yeah, I think it's going to be really nice. It's definitely not like a super exciting knit, but I don't know. What Chris prefers for sweaters is like masculine basics. And I think I'm recognizing that like I like knitting things that have a lot of design features, but that's not necessarily wearable for Chris. And that I feel good about knitting something that might be pretty mindless. You know, the knit 7 purl 1 on the broken rib rows is definitely like a little, you have to think a little bit, but you can also read the knitting, and it's not like doing an entire sweater in ribbing, because you're also getting those rows that are all knits. So yeah, I am excited about this one. This one is not unsuccessful yet, knock on wood. That this one will continue to bring me some joy and hopefully look nice when it finishes, and maybe be like a holiday present for Christopher. Yeah. So before I actually talk about the next project, I want to talk about this yarn a little bit more. It is beautiful. It's a 2-ply. It is really bouncy and squishy. It's non-superwash, so you know it's marled, which is a style that has been popularized by Spincycle, but a lot of their yarns, I believe, are superwash, and you know this is definitely, I think, a very different type of yarn than Spincycle. These colors are different. This one's a lot lighter. I think I actually prefer the darker one, but I might do some striping so that it doesn't change too suddenly. And I'm also maybe going to use this, for like some of the smaller stripes, and then like the actual color blocked part, try to use more of this dark one. But you can definitely see that like you're getting some of this, like this color is really like this one. I think it's gonna work. Maybe I can kind of fade them. That might actually look really cool. Faded. So yeah. I'm back. I had to do a little rearranging. So last night when I decided to frog the Azor sweater, I was feeling a little sad, but I didn't want to cast on anything new. I have a lot of works in progress on my needles, many that I would like to clear at some point or frog. But there's a couple that I like, but that I put down for some reason and just haven't finished. And I decided to pick one of them up and hopefully try to finish. And this is, and it's an old one. This is that work in progress. And this is the Cozy Classic Light by Jessie Maid. And I am knitting it in 3 skeins of Malabrigo, and I used a little bit of a mystery scrap sock yarn to help with the fade. Chris's mother actually gave me these yarns for my birthday, I think my 30th birthday, so almost 2 years ago, and I loved them together so much that I decided to fade them, and this was probably one of my earlier sweaters. This, I think, maybe was the first time I had ever done a tubular cast on. But I think this is a really nice sweater. I really like Jessie Maid's patterns. As some people have observed before, she writes a lot. So if you're newer, there's a lot to go off of. If you maybe are a more experienced knitter, or you are used to reading knitting shorthand, it can be a lot of pages. But I liked her description for the tubular cast on. I liked how she told you, she gives some like fade suggestions that I really like and that I used. And I think the fit of this on me is really nice. I finished it when I had cast off and hadn't started the sleeves. And so I started the sleeves. I'm actually not doing anything particular for the fade. I'm kind of just bringing in different colors because I don't want to pay too much attention to it right now. And I'm not decreasing the sleeves. I'm going to get to the wrist and then decrease rapidly and do kind of like a balloon or puff sleeve. But I'm excited for this to be done because I think the colors are beautiful. I will say I couldn't remember what needle size I had used because I don't take good notes on my knitting, which is something that at some point I should change. So I guessed a US size 4, and I think it looks good. So I'm going to keep using the US size 4. It looks the same to me. I'm just using Magic Loop. And yeah, I think it's a really nice raglan. The Malabrigo, I have a lot of this purple left. This will be really helpful for the sleeves. It is a superwash sock yarn, but I find it really soft and like nice to the touch, more so than other superwash yarns. Like I think I'm going to wear this a lot. I have put it on without the sleeves and I don't want to take it off. It's a nice level of warmth, and this would be like a nice thing that I think I could wear all the time. So I really want to finish it, and I think that having something done will feel satisfying after ripping out most of a sweater. I will say, because of the colors, it is a little stripy on the fade. I did this when I was still newer to knitting, and also, you know, I think it's okay that it's a little stripy. I tend to like fades the best these days if they're very smooth transition-wise, but sometimes it's just not like that. So yeah, I think I have been calling this like my iridescent beetle sweater because the colors remind me of a beetle. You know, it's funny coming back to old works in progress. Like, I think I haven't worked on this for maybe more than a year, and it's hard to remember what you were doing. It's hard to remember, like, I can't tell you about the knitting of the rest of this because I don't remember what I did. And I have a lot of works in progress that I would like to finish. And for me, if I put something down, it's really difficult to pick it back up again. I don't blame myself for starting a lot of new things this year. I think that's what I needed, and not just to finish the dress, but also emotionally, I think I had to let myself be really free with my knitting. But I also do know that I get satisfaction from being able to wear something. I think I'm really a process knitter, but I like having something afterwards, especially because I don't really like going clothes shopping. So I'm gonna try to finish this and Chris's sweater before I cast on anything else. I have Nutidin that I have a plan for. I have more Junction Fiber mill yarn that I'm going to make an East Wind jacket with. I have like a bunch of different projects and have yarn set aside, which is really helpful because right now I don't really want to spend money on yarn. So I'm glad that I have projects. I do need to buy some yarn because I want to make one of my very closest friends and their girlfriend matching like hooded dickies is what they want. Very cute. So I think I'm gonna buy some Cascade 220, but I am sort of a little bit, I think, in a knitting funk, and I don't know what I need to do to get out of it. I am considering maybe signing up for a test knit soon. Catherine Clark, who I have test knit for previously, has a beautiful sweater, and I was tempted to apply for the test knit, but I stopped myself because I don't want to buy yarn and I don't have anything in my stash for it. But I don't know, I had all of these ideas of what I was gonna knit when I was done with the dress, and now for whatever reason, I'm just not feeling very motivated or inspired. And it's great to do that sweater for Chris because I can do it when we're watching TV or when Chris is playing video games and when we're just hanging out. But I don't know. I'm not finding myself wanting to knit as much, and maybe that's normal, and I'm not gonna push it that hard. I studied art when I was an undergrad, and when I finished my senior year thesis, I didn't want to do art again for a while, and then came back. And I know that knitting the way it has been for me the past few years will come back too. So I'm trying not to stress too much and just sort of take the ups and downs. And one thing that is hard about it is that we are coming into the cold season, although it is really warm today here where I live in Vermont in the United States. It's in the 70s Fahrenheit, which is weird for this time of year. But this is the season when I would be knitting because our garden is done for the year. We had a great season. Excited to grow many things next year, but this is the slow season. This is the fiber crafting season. And so it's feeling a little weird that I'm not completely there. And, you know, it might have to do with my back injury as well. I'm getting more information about my back injury and gonna figure it out, but we'll see. There is one more thing that I did want to share, which is that for my bachelorette party, I'm laughing a little because I spent the day with my very close friend Audrey, who I talk about a lot, and then we met another friend and that friend's baby and stayed in a cabin overnight, and that was the bachelorette party. It was perfect for me. It was everything I could have wanted. I'm not a big party person, but Audrey planned a surprise for me during the day, which I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it because it was so incredible. Audrey brought me to a weaving studio where this amazing woman named Ruby taught me how to weave. And I've been wanting to learn to weave for so long. And I wanted to share with you the sample that I made there on that day. And here it is. So I haven't washed it yet. This is actually Harrisville Designs. And Ruby set up everything for me. The loom, the warp, all of the stuff. She has very graciously told me that she's going to continue to help me learn. And she basically was like, you should try weaving to see if you like it, especially because looms are so expensive. And I loved it. I thought it was so amazing. You know, we did plain weave and then we did a pattern, and it's funny because Audrey sat down and tried it and was so quick, but that's also because Audrey is a dancer and there is part of weaving that is like dancing. I was a little slower, but I was like, oh yeah, like this is something that I like to do. And I am just thrilled. We were talking about color and we were talking about wool, and she showed us everything in her beautiful, incredible studio, which I'll definitely link to below, here in Vermont, because she sells her scarves and weavings, and they're incredible. And so I do feel like there is something ahead that feels really exciting. And what's great is that I have a lot of yarn that I don't know what I'm going to knit with that maybe I will weave with. So this is something that is feeling exciting for the future. I have wanted to weave for so long. It's kind of on my list. I want to keep sheep. We don't have room for that many. I think we could maybe get 3 sheep here. But I want to keep sheep and shear them and spin their wool into yarn and weave and knit. And I think it's good sometimes when you're feeling stuck with one thing to change it up. So once my back is a little better, I'm going to see if I can go back there and do some more weaving, and then maybe borrow my friend Hannah's loom, or also Hannah's amazing. Hannah, hello, if you're watching this. Hannah's amazing, and weaves and is the person who taught me how to spin so that I was able to use my spinning wheel. I haven't been spinning, although I do have fiber. But yeah, there are other exciting things that I want to try. And I'm really lucky because I actually live near a huge weaving school called the Marshfield School of Weaving, where I think Hannah has taken a great wheel spinning class. But I just live in a place where there's like a lot of opportunities for different types of fiber arts. So that is kind of where I'm at. I think sometimes when you're making a podcast, there can be pressure to have a lot to show and finished objects, like beautiful finished objects to talk about. But now that the big thing is done, I'm just sort of feeling a little lost. I would love to hear what you do when you feel lost with knitting, whether that be to take a break or to find inspiration in a certain way, or to try a new technique. I am thinking that I am ready to steek something because I've never steeked anything before. But what do you do to find inspiration when you are just feeling like it's not the thing that you're reaching for. Either way, as always, thank you so much for joining me on this journey. It is a journey, and I know that whatever happens, there will be much knitting in my future. And yeah, I'm just always so appreciative of all of you for hanging out with me. So I will leave you with that. I hope to come back and do another episode in 2 weeks, and I'll update you with where I'm at with all of this knitting. And yeah, we'll see. I hope that you are enjoying this turn into a new month, into November, and that you are taking care of yourself and doing something that is making you feel great and feels nourishing. I'll see you again soon. Take care. Bye.